Emma stepped into the office that Monday morning, her steps quiet on the polished floors, carrying a weight she couldn't explain, a mix of anticipation and unease that clung to her like morning fog. The weekend had passed with its usual calm, the hours stretching slowly, uneventful, but now as she pushed open the glass doors and walked past the familiar rows of desks, she felt the air shift subtly, as if the office itself had changed in her absence. She hung her coat and set her bag down, glancing around for her coworkers, but her eyes were drawn to a figure she hadn't noticed before, a man standing by the large window that looked out over the city, tall and silent, his back straight, his hands loosely clasped behind him, staring out as if he were waiting for something, or someone, and she couldn't tell which. His name tag read Liam, and the letters seemed to pulse in her mind as she blinked, trying to make sense of the sudden sense of intrigue and unease he stirred within her. She tried to focus on the screen in front of her, opening her email and replying to messages, but every few minutes, her glance strayed back to him, noticing the way his hair caught the morning light, the subtle tilt of his head, the gentle way he seemed to observe the office without really seeing it, like a quiet presence aware of everything but untouched by it, and Emma felt a strange pull she didn't understand, a flutter in her chest that was both thrilling and confusing, because she had never believed in instant connections, never felt a spark this sudden or intense in a professional setting, and yet here it was, undeniable, stirring something in her that made her stomach tighten. She told herself to stop staring, to concentrate on her work, to remember that he was just another employee, someone new, probably temporary, and yet the thought alone made her pulse quicken. The office hummed around her, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, voices murmuring across cubicles, but Liam seemed outside of it, isolated in his own quiet world, and when he finally turned his gaze and their eyes met, Emma felt her breath catch, an electric jolt that left her heart thudding, a moment so brief it almost didn't happen, yet it lingered in her mind like smoke she couldn't shake, like a whisper she couldn't ignore. She looked away quickly, cheeks burning, focusing on her screen again, telling herself it was nothing, that it was absurd to feel so strongly about someone she barely knew, but the truth was, her mind was already racing ahead, imagining who he might be, what he might be like, whether he felt the same sudden pull, the same inexplicable curiosity that left her feeling vulnerable and alive at once. As the morning wore on, she found herself noticing every detail about him, the way he moved when he walked to the coffee machine, the faint smile he gave a colleague as if sharing a private thought, the way he carried himself with quiet confidence yet without arrogance, and each small observation made her heart beat faster, made her wonder why someone could have such an impact without even speaking a word, without even knowing her name. She tried to distract herself with emails, meetings, reports, but each time she glanced at him across the room, she felt the same strange warmth, a mixture of excitement and nervousness, as if she were on the edge of something unknown and profound. Her curiosity grew with each passing moment, mingling with a sense of anticipation she couldn't define, a feeling that something significant was about to happen, something that would break the monotony of her carefully ordered office life and leave her thinking of nothing else. When lunchtime came, she found herself hesitating to go to the cafeteria, suddenly aware that her day was no longer just her own, that a silent presence across the room had entered her thoughts and made ordinary moments feel charged, and as she gathered her things, she realized she wanted, almost desperately, to find an excuse to talk to him, to know him, to bridge the invisible distance between them. Yet she also felt a flicker of fear of overstepping, of imagining too much, of letting herself be caught up in something fleeting, something that might vanish as suddenly as it had appeared. And still, despite every rational thought, she felt drawn to him, pulled by a force she could not name, an invisible thread that seemed to connect her heart to his without explanation, a quiet tension that thrummed in the air like the subtle vibration of a chord before it resolves into harmony, leaving her restless and alert, aware of every sound, every movement, every tiny shift in expression, as if the office had shrunk around them, isolating them in a bubble where only the two of them existed. Even when she forced herself to look at spreadsheets and respond to emails, her mind wandered back to him, imagining conversations that had not yet happened, imagining smiles and moments of connection that might never exist, and she couldn't stop the daydreams from rising unbidden, as vivid and real as if they had already occurred, a quiet longing she didn't fully understand, but that left her chest tight and her thoughts spinning. By mid-afternoon, she found herself standing at the printer, her hands trembling slightly as she collected documents, and there he was again, nearby, seemingly oblivious to the proximity yet undeniably close. And when their hands brushed over a folder, a spark passed between them, subtle and electric, leaving Emma startled, her heart racing, a warmth spreading through her chest, her mind suddenly aware of every nerve ending, every subtle sensation, every quickening beat. And she had to pull her hand away, pretending to be occupied while feeling an ache of longing she didn't know how to name. She smiled nervously at him, a fleeting, awkward acknowledgement, and Liam gave her the smallest of nods, a gesture that seemed loaded with unspoken meaning, and Emma felt herself caught in the tension of unacknowledged emotions, a pull towards something intimate yet undefined, something she could not yet articulate, a thread connecting them without words, delicate and fragile, yet undeniable in its presence. The day passed in a blur of heightened awareness, her senses alert to every subtle motion, every glance, every inflection of voice, and she realized with a mixture of thrill and anxiety that she had been waiting for something like this without ever knowing it. A meeting of hearts and minds that startled her with its intensity, its quiet yet undeniable force. And as she packed up her bag at the end of the day, her eyes once more drifting to where Liam had been, now empty, she felt a strange emptiness, a sense of longing that made her wonder whether she would ever see him again, whether the invisible thread between them would persist or vanish with the closing of the office doors, leaving only memory and unfulfilled anticipation, a gentle ache that lingered as she stepped out into the fading light, unaware that the next day would bring them closer. And that this sudden, shocking connection was only the beginning of a story neither of them could yet imagine, a story that would unravel in ways both unexpected and unforgettable, shaping the rest of their days with moments of quiet intensity, subtle attraction, and emotional depth that neither could ignore, leaving Emma walking home with a heart full of questions, a mind alive with possibility, and a sense that her life had already begun to shift in ways she could neither predict nor resist. Emma couldn't stop thinking about Liam after that first week, every glance, every fleeting moment replaying in her mind like a film she couldn't pause. And when Monday came again, she found herself arriving at the office earlier than usual, her heart racing with anticipation and an inexplicable nervousness, feeling both excitement and hesitation as she walked past the familiar cubicles, the fluorescent lights overhead casting a soft glow across the rows of desks, and when she saw Liam near the conference room, arranging papers and files, she felt that same pull in her chest, that delicate tension that had begun to define her days, making her aware of every sound, every movement, as if the office had shrunk around them and only the two of them existed in a quiet bubble of possibility. And she wondered how someone could have such a strong effect without even speaking directly to her, without even fully acknowledging her presence, yet somehow commanding her attention in a way she had never experienced before, a mix of fascination, longing, and gentle fear that left her both thrilled and uncertain. And throughout the morning, she found herself distracted, her fingers hovering over her keyboard, her mind wandering back to him again and again, imagining conversations that had not yet occurred, imagining moments of connection, small gestures, a smile, a glance, the subtle brush of hands over a shared document, and the thought of it made her stomach flutter, her chest tight with a mixture of anticipation and the fear of revealing too much, of letting her emotions show in ways that might be too obvious, yet she could not hide them, could not contain the quiet pull she felt, a magnetic force that seemed to draw her toward him even as she tried to focus on work. And when lunchtime approached, Emma found herself hesitating to leave her desk, not because she was busy but because she did not want to leave the space where he might notice her, where she might catch a glimpse of him, a momentary interaction that would sustain her for hours. And when she finally decided to take a break, she walked slowly, carefully, trying to appear casual, and she noticed Liam walking toward the printer, carrying a stack of documents, and their eyes met again, just briefly, but enough to send a shiver down her spine, a reminder that there was an unspoken connection simmering between them, quiet but undeniably there. And as she passed by, he offered a small smile, the kind that seemed to reach his eyes and linger in the corners of her mind long after the moment had passed, leaving her with a warmth she could not quite define, a mixture of comfort and longing that made her cheeks flush and her thoughts swirl, and she couldn't help but wonder if he felt it too, if he was aware of the same pull, The same subtle tension that made ordinary office moments feel charged with possibility. And later that afternoon, when the office had quieted and most of their coworkers had left, Emma stayed behind to finish a report, her fingers flying over the keyboard while her thoughts remained only half on the work, and then she felt him approaching, Liam's presence quiet yet noticeable, like a soft shadow in the corner of her vision, and when he spoke, it was in a low, calm voice that made her heart skip. "I didn't expect anyone to be here this late," he said, and the words were simple but carried a weight, a softness that made her feel both startled and comforted at once, and she looked up, meeting his gaze, her own voice barely above a whisper as she responded, "Neither did I," and for a moment, time seemed to slow, the usual office sounds fading away as they shared a space that felt both intimate and charged with emotion, and when they reached for the same folder on the table, their hands brushed, light and accidental, yet electric in a way that left them both frozen for a heartbeat, aware of the warmth of contact, aware of the shared moment that neither could explain, and though they quickly pulled their hands back, the brief touch lingered in their minds, in their hearts, a small spark that ignited a fire of curiosity and longing neither had expected, and Emma felt a sudden rush of embarrassment and exhilaration, her chest tight, her mind spinning, as if the simple act of brushing hands had opened a door to something larger, something unspoken but powerful, and Liam's eyes held hers a second longer than necessary, a subtle acknowledgement of the same tension, the same silent attraction that filled the air between them, and as he returned to his desk, Emma felt her pulse racing, her mind replaying the moment over and over, imagining what it might mean, wondering if he had felt it too, and as the day drew on, she noticed small things she hadn't before, the way he laughed quietly at a joke she couldn't hear, the way he adjusted his papers with a careful precision, the way he seemed aware of her presence without staring, a constant awareness that made her feel seen in a way that was both comforting and unnerving. And by the time evening came, Emma realized she was dreading the moment she would have to leave, that the day had been shaped entirely by the quiet, subtle interactions she had shared with him, interactions that felt charged with unspoken meaning, a connection that was growing stronger with every glance, every small smile, every shared space in the office. And when she finally packed up her bag, her heart felt heavy with longing, aware that tomorrow would bring another day, another chance to see him, to feel that pull, to navigate the complicated emotions that had begun to fill her days with anticipation and quiet excitement, and as she stepped out into the cool evening air, she could not stop the smile that crept across her face, a reflection of the unexpected connection that had taken root in the office, a connection that was quiet yet undeniable, subtle yet profoundly shifting her world in ways she could neither ignore nor fully understand, leaving her both anxious and hopeful, aware that her life had begun to change in ways that were thrilling, emotional, and completely unexpected, as though a new chapter had opened in her story, one filled with longing, curiosity, and the first stirring of something more profound than she had ever anticipated. And as she walked home, replaying every glance, every brush of hands, every small smile, Emma felt a mix of fear and excitement, knowing that whatever was beginning between her and Liam was delicate, powerful, and entirely uncharted, and that the coming days would reveal whether this silent, growing connection would remain a quiet, secret thrill, or blossom into something that could change both of their lives forever, leaving her heart full, her mind alive, and her emotions teetering on the edge of discovery, longing, and the first true taste of romance that had appeared in the most unlikely of places, a quiet office that had suddenly become the stage for the unexpected, thrilling, and deeply emotional beginning of a story neither of them could yet imagine. A story that promised to unfold with intensity, subtle longing, and moments of connection that would leave them both forever changed. The week that followed brought a mixture of excitement and tension that Emma had never felt before, as the project she had been assigned with Liam forced them to spend hours together, side by side, in ways that made ordinary work feel charged with electricity, and from the moment they met at the conference room table, she could feel the subtle pull between them, a delicate tension that seemed to grow stronger with every shared glance, every carefully measured word, every slight smile that lingered too long to be accidental, and Emma found herself acutely aware of the small details, the way Liam's eyes softened when he looked at her, the gentle inflection in his voice when he explained a task, the way he leaned slightly forward when listening, as if giving her his full attention, making her heart beat faster each time she noticed it, and the hours passed quickly, conversations flowing naturally despite the work, filled with laughter that came easily, jokes that made her cheeks warm, and shared observations that sparked quiet moments of understanding and connection, moments that were private even in the crowded office, a silent intimacy forming between them, almost invisible to the others but powerful to them both. And Emma realized with a mixture of thrill and nervousness that she had been longing for this, for someone who seemed to understand her so completely without needing explanations, someone whose presence could make the world feel lighter and brighter at once. Yet she also felt a flicker of fear, the fear that this connection, as fragile as it was, could shatter if misinterpreted, if spoken too loudly, or if one wrong word was said, and despite the fear, she could not deny the warmth spreading through her chest each time Liam smiled, the subtle quickening of her pulse when he brushed against her accidentally while reaching for a document, the small sigh of relief she felt when their hands met briefly, lightly, over a stack of papers, and the tension of that moment lingered far longer than necessary, unspoken but deeply felt, an invisible thread tying them together in a quiet intimacy that neither could name but both recognized as something significant. And as the afternoon stretched on, their conversation drifted beyond the work, touching on personal stories, favorite books, and dreams for the future, and Emma found herself laughing more freely than she had in months, feeling a rare sense of being truly seen, truly heard, as if this quiet office space had become a sanctuary for something tender and real, something that went beyond ordinary professional interactions, and Liam's own laughter, soft and genuine, created a rhythm in her heart she could not ignore, a melody that pulled her closer to him with each passing minute, and when he paused, his gaze lingering on her face, Emma felt the room shrink to the space between them, every sound fading into the background, leaving only the quiet awareness of each other's presence, a closeness that was thrilling and terrifying at the same time, and in that shared silence, Emma realized how much she had been longing for this kind of connection, how desperately she had wanted someone who could stir her emotions so subtly yet completely. And yet she also felt the weight of propriety, the unspoken rules of the office, the careful balance of maintaining professionalism while navigating a relationship that had already begun to grow in unexpected ways, and Liam, seemingly sensing the same tension, offered a quiet smile, a mixture of reassurance and unspoken acknowledgement, and Emma's chest tightened with the thrill of recognition, the acknowledgement that this was no longer just casual curiosity or fleeting attraction, but a quiet, growing bond, a connection that was deeper, more nuanced, and undeniably real. And as they continued to work, their proximity sparked moments of awareness she could not fully control, the brush of hands, the accidental touch while sharing a notebook, the small gestures of attention and care that created a rhythm between them, an invisible dance of connection that was subtle yet profoundly moving. And Emma felt a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension, knowing that these moments, as delicate and fleeting as they were, had the power to change everything, to awaken feelings she could not ignore, to stir emotions she had long kept hidden. And as the sun began to dip low, casting a warm glow across the office, Emma noticed a shift in Liam's demeanor, a quiet seriousness that made her pulse quicken, and when he spoke, his voice was low, measured, carrying an intensity that made her heart skip. Emma, I know this might sound sudden, but I can't deny it anymore. I've felt a connection with you since the day I arrived, something I didn't expect, something I can't ignore, and the words, simple yet profound, struck her like a spark, leaving her momentarily breathless, her chest tight, her thoughts racing as she tried to absorb the sudden, raw honesty in his confession, and she realized in that instant that she felt the same, that every glance, every shared smile, every fleeting touch had been reciprocated in a way she had been too cautious or too shy to acknowledge, and she responded, her voice barely above a whisper, trembling with emotion, I feel it too, Liam, I've been feeling it for days, maybe even since the first moment. And as their eyes met, the intensity of the moment made the world around them fade into insignificance, leaving only the two of them suspended in a quiet, electric awareness, a realization that this connection, unexpected and sudden, was undeniable, real, and capable of shaping the rest of their days. And yet, just as Emma opened her mouth to speak again, the office door creaked, the sound slicing through the bubble of intimacy, and a colleague entered, bringing with them the mundane reality of the office, the interruption grounding them suddenly in the present, yet leaving behind a lingering heat, a tension that neither could ignore, a silent promise of emotions yet unspoken, of longing yet unfulfilled, and as Liam gave a small, almost imperceptible nod before returning to his work, Emma felt her pulse racing, her mind alive with thoughts, her heart full of hope and anticipation, a quiet certainty that this story was only beginning, that the connection they had discovered, delicate and fragile though it was, would continue to grow, would continue to challenge and thrill them both in ways they could not yet predict, and as she sat back in her chair, her hands clasped in her lap, she reflected on the journey that had begun just a few days ago with a simple glance, a fleeting brush of hands, and an unspoken spark, realizing that the quiet office that had always seemed ordinary had transformed into a stage for unexpected emotions, quiet romance, and dramatic yet tender connections that were both thrilling and terrifying in their intensity. And she knew that the coming days would test their courage, their patience, and their ability to navigate the delicate balance between professional obligations and personal longing. Yet despite the uncertainty, Emma felt a sense of exhilaration she had never known, a sense that life had suddenly become richer, deeper, and infinitely more vibrant because of Liam's presence, and as the day ended, she packed her things with a mixture of reluctance and anticipation, knowing that tomorrow would bring new moments of shared laughter, whispered words, lingering glances, and perhaps, the deepening of a bond that was quietly, profoundly, and undeniably taking root in both their hearts, leaving her walking home with a heart full of possibility, a mind alive with imagination, and a quiet, steady thrill of knowing that the story between them had only just begun. Delicate yet intense, subtle yet all-consuming, a story that promised emotional depth, romantic tension, and moments of profound connection that neither of them could ignore or resist, a story that was theirs alone, unfolding in the most unexpected and unforgettable ways. The following evening, the office felt unusually quiet, almost hushed, as if it were holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come, and Emma arrived early, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nervousness, the memory of Liam's words from the previous week replaying over and over in her mind, each glance and shared smile from their recent interactions now carrying more weight, more meaning, and as she entered the familiar space, she noticed the soft glow of the desk lamps casting warm pools of light across the room, the silence broken only by the distant hum of the air conditioning, and Liam was already there, bent over a stack of documents, his expression focused yet somehow calm, and when he looked up and saw her, his eyes softened instantly, a subtle, unspoken acknowledgement passing between them, a silent recognition of the bond that had been quietly growing over the past days, a connection that neither had fully named but both felt profoundly, and Emma's chest tightened with a mixture of anticipation and tenderness. The same pull she had felt from the very first glance now deepened, more urgent, more undeniable, and they began working together on the project, their proximity sparking subtle moments of awareness, hands brushing over papers, shared glances, quiet laughter that came effortlessly, small conversations that lingered on personal dreams and hopes, moments that made the office feel smaller, more intimate, a private world within a professional space, and each of these moments carried a weight that neither could ignore, a quiet magnetism that drew them closer, their emotions threaded through the mundane tasks of reports and spreadsheets, making the ordinary feel extraordinary, and as the hours passed, Emma felt her heart quicken every time Liam offered a thoughtful comment, a kind smile, or the slightest touch of encouragement, a reassurance that went beyond words, a subtle yet profound gesture that left her both elated and vulnerable, and while the clock ticked on, the tension between them continued to build, a delicate, invisible line connecting their hearts, charged with anticipation and longing, and then, without warning, a loud crash erupted from the storage closet, papers and boxes tumbling to the floor in a chaotic mess, startling Emma and Liam both, and instinctively, Emma rushed toward the noise, heart racing, only to find Liam already moving toward her, his hand steadying her as she reached for a falling stack of files, and in that sudden, chaotic moment, the tension between them shifted into something more palpable, more immediate, their eyes locking in a shared awareness of the intensity of the moment, the adrenaline heightening every sensation, making the brief touch of their hands linger in their minds, sparking a warmth that spread through Emma's chest and left her pulse racing, and Liam's expression was unreadable yet tender, a mixture of concern, relief, and something unspoken that hovered between them like a delicate thread, and as they gathered the scattered papers, laughter broke through the tension, nervous and joyful, a release that made their shared proximity feel natural, comfortable, yet undeniably charged, and in the midst of the mess, Liam's hand lingered on hers just a fraction longer than necessary, a subtle, deliberate gesture that spoke volumes, and Emma felt a shiver run through her, a quiet thrill of recognition, knowing that this moment, small and unexpected, had changed something fundamental between them. A line had been crossed into uncharted territory of emotion, attraction, and connection that neither could deny or ignore, and as they finally straightened the last of the files, the office seemed to hold its breath, the quiet hum of lights and distant city noise creating a soft backdrop to a moment that felt suspended in time, and Liam, his voice low and sincere, spoke words that made Emma's heart soar and ache at the same time. "Emma, I can't let this end without telling you how much you mean to me," and the simplicity of the confession, combined with the gentle intensity in his gaze, left her breathless, the warmth in her chest spreading outward, a mixture of relief, joy, longing, and a vulnerability she hadn't anticipated but welcomed, and she realized in that instant that the feelings she had tried to contain, the fluttering heartbeats, the stolen glances, the quiet pull toward him, were mutual, undeniable, and profound, and she felt tears prick her eyes, a mixture of happiness and the overwhelming power of connection, and as they stood there, surrounded by the quiet office and scattered papers, a shared understanding passed between them, a silent agreement that this was only the beginning, that the bond they had discovered was delicate yet strong, a story unfolding in real time, filled with subtle romance, emotional intensity, and dramatic tension that neither could ignore, and in that shared silence, Emma felt the full weight of what had begun, a story that was theirs alone. A quiet love taking root in a space that had once been ordinary but now held the promise of extraordinary emotions, intimate moments, and tender discoveries, and she reached out instinctively, taking Liam's hand in hers, feeling the warmth, the steady beat of his pulse, the reassuring strength in his grasp, and when their eyes met, there was no need for words, no need for explanations, only the profound acknowledgement that they were finally aligned, hearts and minds in quiet harmony, and as the minutes stretched into hours, the outside world faded away, leaving only the two of them in that soft, glowing office, the chaos of the closet forgotten, the world beyond the walls unimportant, and every glance, every gentle touch, every small smile carried a weight that was both thrilling and comforting, a delicate dance of emotions that neither could resist. And in the midst of this private, emotional universe, Liam whispered again, softly, tenderly, "I don't want this to be just a moment, Emma. I want this to be real," and the words sent a wave of emotion through her, leaving her breathless, tears sliding silently down her cheeks as she nodded, a quiet affirmation that matched the fluttering of her heart, the intensity of the connection, and the longing that had been building since the first day he appeared at the office, and in that instant, surrounded by scattered papers, dim light, and the lingering echoes of laughter, they shared a quiet, profound closeness, a romantic tension that was gentle yet undeniable, emotional yet grounded, a tender intimacy born of shared moments, laughter, vulnerability, and courage, and as they finally left the office together, walking side by side into the cool evening air, Emma felt a deep sense of joy, anticipation, and the knowledge that life had shifted irreversibly, that the shocking, unexpected incident in the office had transformed their world into one of possibility, emotional richness, romance, and heartfelt connection, a story of longing and fulfillment, anticipation and realization, subtle yet powerful, that would continue to unfold in ways both tender and profound, leaving their hearts and minds forever changed, bound together by the quiet, undeniable spark that had begun in the simplest of moments, a shared glance, a brush of hands, and a confession whispered in the soft glow of an ordinary office that had become extraordinary, a story that promised emotional depth, romantic fulfillment, and a connection that was theirs alone, a delicate, profound, and unforgettable chapter in the lives of two people who had found each other in the most unexpected place, and Emma realized with a joyful, full heart that sometimes, life's most powerful stories began quietly, with small gestures, subtle touches, and moments of honesty, building into something unforgettable, dramatic yet gentle, and as they walked into the night together, their hands entwined, hearts aligned, and minds full of unspoken promises, she knew That their journey was only beginning, that the emotional and romantic path they had discovered in that quiet office would continue to grow, evolve, and deepen, bringing laughter, tenderness, longing, and fulfillment, all in a story that was beautiful, heartfelt, and unforgettable, a story of connection found, emotions realized, and love blossoming in the most unexpected of places, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary in ways that would leave them both forever changed.